Welcome to Leader You by Black River Performance Management, where we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. In this leadership podcast, we will dive into the lived experiences of people flourishing in today's workplace and beyond. Join us to hear real-life examples of experiences from our own lives and from the leaders we know and trust. Hello, and welcome to the Leader You podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing my dear friend, Cherisse Brown. This is her second time on the Leader You podcast. She was actually the first person to be on the Leader You podcast where we talked about resilience. I'm going to do a quick bio, but I do want you to go back to podcast 1 and listen to that one on resilience. But Cherisse Brown works at Idaho State University. She has her master's degree in public administration, where she worked on a project. Her capstone was on emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. And she's the proud mother of 4 amazing kids, whom have become like my second kids as well, kind of like family.
They're pretty great.
The family that you choose.
The family.
Right?
The chosen family.
The chosen family. She enjoys spending time with her family, cooking, traveling, music, reading, crafting, and being outdoors. Mm-hmm. I know she is a serious crafter. She can crochet.
Not straight, but I can.
She can crochet. Her professional experience includes managing diverse teams, working closely in the nonprofit sector, and she has many years of working with at-risk populations. She has a social work background. She is most passionate and compelled about empowering and inspiring others to recognize their value and maximize their potential. And that's why we're soul sisters.
That is definitely a big part of it. Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you for being here today.
Yes, thanks for having me back.
Yes.
It's nice to return.
You're the first return guest.
Yes. And I was saying when the first time I was terrified, and this time I feel way more comfortable. And it's not because of you. It's just because of like being vulnerable and talking about something to people.
Well, hopefully it's because you've been practicing your emotional intelligence skills
have.
and those strategies for how to manage fear and how to manage uncertainty and all the thoughts that go in our head. And that's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to have Cherisse back is I really wanted to focus on kind of how we met, what the journeys looked like, how it's impacted her life, how it's impacted my life, how this work is something that we're passionate about, spreading like confetti all over.
Confetti spready.
Yes. And creating ripples of impact in our schools, in our families, in our workplaces, in our communities, and what that journey's looked like. Because I think it's a concept that people kind of know what emotional intelligence is, but I don't think they know what it looks like in practice, and they know what the term and the definition means.
Yeah.
But what does that mean, right?
Yeah, I think what does it look like to each person? And I think in my experience teaching emotional intelligence in my college success class at ISU, as well as me being a student of it, I can tell you that like I've been to counseling over the years. I've read a lot of books. I listen to podcasts. Like I'm a seeker of how to help myself. And this has been the number one thing that I can always lean on, a strategy here that gives me perspective. It helps me with self-control, emotional impulse control. It helps me to be able to manage myself so I'm not making things worse, but I also am more confident in my ability to manage and identify my emotions in healthy and constructive ways.
Yeah, as they happen, right?
As they happen, and they do, they do happen.
They do. It doesn't mean you get to escape them just because you have these skills, right?
And research says we have 27 emotional experiences an hour, which is about 400 a day. So if you think about that as a human being and what we're experiencing all the time, if we can identify how we're feeling, why we're feeling that way, what we need, we are just running amok with those emotions. Actually, the emotions are running us, and we're just running around with thoughts and behaviors that are motivated by emotions, and we're not doing well usually.
Yeah, and we're just reacting to each stimulus, right? And with all of those emotions, 400 a day, 27 per hour, it's kind of hard to leave them at the door, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, I only feel 3 emotions. The top 3 are what? Happy, sad, angry. And really, we have such a variety and a huge vocabulary of emotions. If we can pick out what we're actually feeling and identify and validate that, then our emotional vocabulary helps us in our relationships, because we can say to someone, I'm not angry, I'm feeling rejected. And that's a completely different approach someone would take with you if you're feeling rejected over angry. And so it gives people a vocabulary to be able to support you and love you through it, give you space, give you grace, come close, stay away. But we can't help them unless we know how to help ourselves. And I tell people all the time in trainings I do, your emotions are your responsibility. A lot of times we give that responsibility to somebody else, and that's just not true, that we have to own those, communicate them, be comfortable with them.
Yeah, I hear.
And use them to our benefit.
Yeah, I hear they made me feel this way. And I try to help people with their language, too, about they did this behavior and you felt this way.
Yeah.
So taking responsibility and ownership for when you did this, I felt rejected. So taking responsibility, that's the one thing that we all have the capacity to do.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's easier to blame. And that's kind of where we as a society like to live, in the blame and shaming other people and that victim mindset. This is more of an empowering journey, and one where you take responsibility and you also recognize that your emotions are normal too.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
They're not good or bad. They're just part of the human existence.
Yeah.
But the more we deny and suppress or eat or drink or Netflix and chill our emotions, the less engaged we are with who we are as human beings. And the more we suffer.
Yeah.
And I think learning emotional intelligence, practicing the strategies, it helps to eliminate our human suffering in ways that nothing else has that I've experienced. And I've done some work on myself.
I know. I hear you. I've been doing all the same things, and it's been the most powerful and impactful tool because I actually have a language.
Yes.
I have strategies, and I have somebody on the journey with me. That's you.
Yeah.
That is continually improving. I have other people on the journey. I have people that support me through coaching, through courses that I've taken. So it's a journey that none of us have arrived on.
No. And really, I mean, if you think generationally for us, the way we were parented and the way we were taught is completely different than what my kids are doing with my grandbabies.
Yeah.
Like, your feelings matter. Are you okay? Talk to me. And for my generation, it was more like, you need to be seen and not heard. If you're going to be sad, go in the bedroom, come out when you can be nice. You know, your behaviors because of your emotions are unacceptable. You'll get a spanking if you feel that way. And that was just normal back then, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to blame or shame anybody about doing it wrong. I'm saying it's just progressed so much in a way that we can do it so much better by validating and listening and helping our grandbabies get in touch with their emotions so that they don't struggle and take them out on their parents or their friends, school teachers, whatever. It's such an empowering tool.
Yeah. Our emotions impact our behaviors,
and our
thoughts and our decision making. Every aspect of our life is impacted by our emotions. So let's take it back, not just to, how we met, but share your story about kind of when you were growing up and then how you've come to learn about emotional intelligence, how you've put it into practice, kind of like the short version of what you had then and what you've been working on the past 6 years?
Yeah. Like, how far back? Like to the...
Wherever you feel comfortable.
Ew, geez, that's a long way. So I just remember when I was little feeling like I was abnormal because I had so many feelings and I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't have a vocabulary. I didn't have a way to use outlets for them. And so, maybe I would overeat sometimes, or maybe I'd be overly aggressive or overly sensitive about things. And I think as I got older, and then I went through a divorce at 30, and I had 4 little kids, and I was struggling. I was like, how do people do this? What do people use to help? And how can you overcome this and feel like you've done it reasonably well? And with other situations from that time forward, I mean, I was managing school and work and kids and homework and just life in general, bills and home ownership and yard work and laundry, like all the things. And so I remember taking my emotions out sometimes on my kids, right? They were the ones that they pushed me over the edge, and they're the ones that got the screaming or the grounding or the punishment, right? And it was because I couldn't stop myself long enough to go, what's going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? What do I need right now so I don't take this out on other people? And I remember taking a training once that taught me like a parenting concept that you're not in trouble, you just get to be responsible. And I remember thinking, I need to be responsible too for the way that I'm behaving. And maybe trouble for me like means put me in a timeout. Like maybe I need to go in timeout. Right? Not the nap kind, but you need to go and excuse yourself until you can take some deep breaths or whatever. So I think as I parented alone, what felt like alone in my home, I was a good co-parent with my ex-husband, but when I started my job at ISU and I'd had a lot of social services work experience, and I remember just wanting a tool that would help so many people. And then when I was at ISU and you were hired on, I remember you bringing it to me for the START program and our students. And everything I'd been trying to piecemeal together for my class was in that content. And I remember thinking, wow, this is it. And it's not just for them, it's for me. I'm going to go on the journey with them.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so at first it's stumbling, it's figuring it out, it's being really self-aware, it's paying close attention, it's having a desire to feel better in your emotional existence every day. And so as I started teaching it to the students, I started implementing it for me. And wow. Wow. And even to this, even up till this morning, like I talk about these strategies with people all the time. You know, I was just talking to some family members over the weekend about being open and curious. Stay out of judgment. Stay out of your hurt feels and your storytelling. But what if you're open and curious about why somebody said or did what they did instead of being defensive? What if you just asked questions to see if they were intending to hurt your feelings? You know, and I lean on that one quite a bit. But our START students just did their final presentations for the semester, and it was an emotional intelligence SWOT presentation, and they talked about the strategies in the EQ 2.0 book that the top ones that they've used that have really shifted their lives. And it's so cool to see them have those in their toolbox, and they're like, that's what I need to do right now. That's what I can use to help myself. That's what's going to build my relationship. That's what's going to help me with trust. So I think even up until today, like, this is just in my blood now, Ange. And so this is just kind of
part of your being, your essence.
It's my lingo, it's my essence. So
yeah,
I just think it's such a powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think back on as we were going through the journey together at ISU, I think about how many students said, I wish I had this 20 years earlier. And I'm like, I'm with you. Me too. Same. I wish I knew this. I wish I had the language. I wish I knew these strategies. Yeah. You know, I don't know if I had taken it, but I wish it would have been available to me. Right. And that's all we can do. You know, some people are like, this isn't for me. It's touchy-feely stuff. What would you say to people that say that emotions don't matter? Just, you know, leave them at the door when you come into the workplace.
Yeah, that's so great. When I was writing my capstone on emotional intelligence and public administration, think about public service and how connected we are with our communities and the work that we do on so many levels from the ground up, right? And I think it's so interesting that people say, you know, oh, there's no place here for emotions. But as we talked about, we're human feeling beings with 27 emotional experiences an hour. To not make room for that, I think you're doing a disservice to everybody who works for you. I think the fear is that if I make room for it, then emotions are going to take over the place, and we have to worry about feelings and are you okay, and let people cry it out. And that's not it. It's so simple. If you can be accountable for how you're feeling, why you feel that way, and what you need, you don't run around taking out your emotions on other people, and they're not impacting your work. You are clear about where you stand. You can communicate what you need. And then, like, we just do a quick 2-word check-in as to how people are feeling in my class. It's a quick way to say, how are you doing? I feel overwhelmed and exhausted. And then people know, oh, maybe not the best day to assign you a big new project. Let me check in with you tomorrow. It sounds like you're on the struggle bus today. But it's a form of respect, right? And so if you tell people, don't be who you are and don't feel what you feel here, then you're creating, I think, discomfort. And I think that you're not allowing people to be human. So there's ways you can go about it where it's effective and it's helpful and you can use them to your advantage. You just have to be self-aware enough and not afraid of them to the point where you don't make room for them, because the only people that are going to suffer are the ones that you're telling they can't be human, right?
Right, and you have a fear about it, which is an emotion at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the reality is we all have feelings about things.
Yeah.
And that's the irony.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Or when we get mad about things that we don't like people doing, that's having emotions at work.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest that emotions follow us where we go.
Yeah.
You could be on your way to work and something could happen, a phone call, a crash, your kid forgetting their lunch, late for the bus. You come in hot with a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
And sometimes I love the check-in. That's one of the things that I do with my clients, as well as when I'm facilitating workshops. Let's check the moodometer. Let's find out where you are. And that is a way that you can get a pulse on your team, on your family, on your you and your significant other, for relationship building and finding out where they are. Before you just go, it's connect before content.
Yes.
It's really trying to get to how do I touch base with you before we just start going straight into business, right? So if I find out that one of my employees or one of my kids or my significant other is feeling overwhelmed and stress and anxiety, that gives me an indication and a signal that I can do something different. And so this gives me an opportunity to be more curious, to ask them questions like, what do you need?
And be empathetic.
Yeah. What do you need? How can I support you? Is this a work thing? Or is this a home thing? Is this a us thing? What do you need? Asking people what they need, they don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know. And I think if you're coming into work, I just learned the term not long ago, emotional inflammation. Like if you're emotionally inflamed for whatever reason, and then you go into work or you go into a meeting or you go into a scene where you need to, connect with people, engage with people, and you're emotionally inflamed, chances are you're not going to do well in those interactions, because it's like when you talk about EQ and you're feeling these emotions and you put on 3 or 4 layers of glasses, like you have emotional distortion along with that emotional inflammation. And so I think if we can stop, like the gift is, right, if I can stop before I walk into work and check in with myself and say, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What do I need? And I know that I don't make you responsible for what I need. I can walk in and say, hey, it's been a rough morning. Like I stepped in dog poop in my new shoes. I spilled coffee on my new shirt. My car wouldn't start. I'm frazzled this morning. I need an hour in my office with the door closed, and then I'm going to come out and be focused and ready. You know how to help me because I've just told you where I'm at and what I need. Instead of me coming in, being emotionally inflamed, you not knowing by just reading my nonverbals, and then I say, she just expected me to come in and get right to what she wanted. She didn't even ask what I needed today. And then that's my demeanor throughout the whole day, right?
Yep.
So I think we have to recognize when we're emotionally inflamed. We have to recognize how we're thinking when we are, and then how that drives our behaviors, and then how we use that to blame others for what's going on with us. And I also know, as I've been doing a lot of research and study, that whatever we're experiencing emotionally now is tied to how we emotionally responded to things in our history. And so our history comes right back into the present moment if we're not dealing with these emotions as they come up and figuring out where their places are.
So everything that you've talked about is becoming more self-aware.
Yes.
Because that is the key to actually building emotional intelligence. You can't do anything if you're not aware of it.
Right.
If you're not aware that what emotion it is, how you're feeling, what triggered it, what your triggers are, all of these types of things help you to be more self-aware and recognize when you are emotionally inflamed or hijacked or whatever you want to call it. What it means is you're not clear emotionally,
Yeah.
and you're not thinking. Your brain actually doesn't think when you are emotionally hijacked.
Yeah.
It goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And so it's meant to keep us alive. So we have to be self-aware enough to recognize this is happening.
Yeah.
So this is happening right now. And language is power. It's the wardrobe for the soul, right? So using something like saying, I am angry, well, why don't you try to say something like, because you're not angry. You're not, as an essence and as a being, as a soul, you are not angry. It's a feeling you're experiencing. So using the language of, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling furious, I'm feeling disgusted,
Yeah.
I'm feeling overwhelmed. You are experiencing a feeling. It is not who you are.
Right.
It's not who you, so I think just removing yourself from I am and going to I am feeling this emotion. I'm currently feeling this. Recognizing that will pass just like anything else does.
Yeah.
Emotions are energy that come and go, and some of them feel good and we love them and we want more of them, and some of them are a little more painful and more discomfortable. That's a
good word.
That's a new emotion.
I declare it a new word. A new emotion has been found on
Yes,
this podcast
there's been
today.
a couple on this podcast. Like we came up with one called Hellness. It's health and wellness.
Yes.
Hellness.
I like it.
And
I want to chime in on the perception of emotions, right? How do we perceive them based on our upbringing, based on what was modeled to us through our upbringing people, whoever those were. And they could be your biologicals, they could be your adopted, they could be just who were your caregivers, and whatever was modeled for us as to how to perceive emotions and how to manage those emotions is what we're going to mimic. And
until we recognize that that's a lens that we've been seeing the world through, and is it serving us anymore?
Yeah, and if you think emotions are inconvenient and they're just a way of distracting from things, you won't make room for them. But what happens is you emotionally suffer inside, and that'll take its toll on you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Absolutely.
It will take its toll. Health-wise, it will take its toll. But if you can stop and go, why do I perceive emotions as being inconvenient or irrelevant, or that nobody really cares about how I feel? I mean, whatever that perception is how you're going to view emotions. And you have to get to the bottom of that. That's your job, is to figure out, like, where did I get that from? It's something that was given to you by other people who weren't self-aware, who didn't know anything about this either. And so it gives you the honor and opportunity to stop and go, do I want to continue this way? Or do I want to honor another way of being that feels more authentic to being human, which is we're human beings having emotional experiences every day.
Absolutely.
And not use those to be a label, I am an angry person. It's, I can get angry sometimes because I'm a human. I experience those things. It's just an emotion.
Yeah.
Feelings aren't facts. They don't last forever.
Feelings are not facts.
They are not facts, girl.
And let's talk about I don't feel like it. I'm not feeling this. I'm not feeling that. So let's say somebody says, I just don't feel like getting up and going to the gym. Am I going to wait until that feeling comes? Or sometimes when do we listen to our feelings and when don't we?
Yeah, good question. That ties into motivation, right? And intrinsic.
Well, and building habits and creating rituals and things, sometimes our feelings lie.
Yes.
A lot of times our feelings lie. They're signposts for you to pay attention and to get curious, like you said. So if I'm feeling bored in my job or in my home, right? Let's say I'm bored. And just kind of meh, right? What does that indicate to you? Maybe you could try something new. Maybe you need to learn something. Maybe you need to ask for a new project. Maybe you need to find something that fuels you. What I do know is that it doesn't, it's okay to be bored for a minute. People don't know how to be bored. They're so uncomfortable, they got to scroll constantly because boredom is so uncomfortable now, where it used to be an actual launching pad for creativity.
Yeah.
So if you were bored, you'd make a mud pie. if you were bored, you'd
With
kick a can.
dandelions.
You'd kick a can down the road. You'd make a little boat and put it. Boredom is a good thing. We don't even allow ourselves to get bored anymore because it's so uncomfortable.
Constant stimulation.
Yeah.
And if we're not constantly stimulated, then something's wrong. And I would say, like, for me, I've had to pay really close attention to, like, my social media exposure. So I'm used to be the person where I just felt like I had to keep looking and validate people and like everything or love it and comment and, be active in social media. And then what I started recognizing is, who am I doing this for? Like,
exactly.
Because what I noticed was I was having a lot of emotions come up as I was reading and scrolling through those things, and they weren't serving me well. I might be frustrated by somebody's lack of compassion, or I might be frustrated by somebody's, like, look at me, guys, look what I'm doing. Like right now, I posted 1 hour ago and I'm going to post in an hour, but I want you to know what I'm doing like right now. And so as I felt annoyed or I felt any of those emotions, I just stopped looking. I would just close out the app and go, okay, if that emotion is threatening to take over my peace or where I'm at right now, I'm no longer making space for that. So sometimes I'll open it up, and like this morning I saw my son is in St. George and it was a golf video, and I was just so proud of him. I love him so much. And I was like, I'm so happy I got to see that. But then as I scrolled down, right, I was like, nope, that's the one, close it out. Yes. And so then going from an hour at a time to sometimes 30 seconds at a time, and knowing how those things impact me, which then impacts how I behave in the world. And that's my responsibility too.
Yes, and that is such a good point, because that requires self-awareness of noticing how you're feeling in the moment when you are on social. If you're comparing yourself and thinking your life sucks and you wish you had this, we know the research supports that Instagram and Facebook are created as comparison tools.
Oh, yeah.
And comparison is the thief of joy. It's actually envy is what you're doing. Envying what others have, or being jealous of different relationships and things like that.
Yeah, and you're using it as a tool. You're using it as a tool to shame yourself for what you are not
enough.
And then you make up all these stories to tell yourself, and then before you know it, you just feel like you feel awful about yourself. And so I think, put the phone away and go be bored and find something creative to do. Go paint something. Go look at the beautiful flowers right now and stop and really like smell them and look at them and be in the present moment. I think that's what is for me where I find more of a sense of myself and my true essence of who I am is when I can stop and say, hold on, my well-being right now is more important than caring about everybody else's posts. I can't care about everything. Yeah. And listen, for a lot of years in my life, I wanted to care about everything, and it just emotionally wrung me out. And I read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep. Yes. And that book, it just helped me to see, like, care about what matters to me and make that important and quit trying to care about everything, but then recognizing what I'm passionate about and what I want to give my time to and what emotions that brings up for me that are fulfilling and helpful and fit my purpose, versus me trying to run around and trying to be everything for everyone, because
it's exhausting.
Oh, goodness.
Are you sick of the way things are going in your life? Are you going through some life quakes or some transitions that you could use some support through? Do you feel stuck, bored, stressed, overwhelmed? Could you use a pause to connect your heart, mind, spirit, and self? We know that feeling. We've been there before. And that's why we're offering a solution that we know has worked for us. It's a chance for you to pause and to reflect and to grow and to transition well. It's not something you do alone. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's a willingness to do things that are so important that they're worth doing, even and especially when you're feeling that fear. This Women's Lotus Retreat features a chance to be surrounded by people who are as motivated and as connected as you seek to be. You can expect to gain new skills, shift old mindsets, old habits, and ways of being that make you feel stuck. If you're looking for CEUs and a reason to ask for time off from work for professional development, this is an amazing opportunity awaiting you. Your investment and emotional enrollment in the process of development opens the doors for you to change and for change to happen in your life. It isn't easy, but it's simple. So my question to you is, will you enroll or walk away from this opportunity? And if not now, when? Treat yourself and register today with the link in the bio. We hope to see you there this September in beautiful Teton Valley, Idaho. And society pushes you that way too. We live in this soul-sucking hustle culture where if you're not doing this, or, the success script is based on extrinsic things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No matter, it's what you look like, it's the title, it's all the sexy stuff. And it's not really geared towards working on this internal stuff.
No, absolutely not.
In fact, that kind of is maybe that's for you kind of thing.
I'm not a meditation person. I don't do yoga. I don't spin on bikes. I'm not that person. We talked about
actually,
that
you are. So let's talk about that. Not that person. That's a language. That's a fixed mindset, right?
Yeah.
So just talk about your growth from saying, I'm not the kind of person, or I'm not a spinning person. The Powerhouse was a spinning studio that we opened pre-COVID. Ended up having to shut it down right at COVID. But we had a great tribe of people that loved it.
Fantastic.
But I asked Cherisse in the beginning to come to some spinning classes.
Just try it.
And what was your response?
Oh yeah, I'm not a spinning person. I'm not the spinning type. Because in
and
my
I'm like,
head,
there's no spinning type.
Yeah, in my head, whatever I had seen, like, it was intense, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I could do that. Do I want to do that? That doesn't look like any fun to me. And then who got to the first 100 rides first? Me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, looks like you're the spinning type, aren't you?
Yeah. It looks like you've shifted a little bit.
But that just goes to show you were self-aware to recognize and to be vulnerable enough to say, I have a fixed mindset about this, because we work through it. And I'm like, just come. How do you know you're not the spinning type if you've never done it? That was a judgment call, and it was a fixed mindset. And we all have those we all have them in our life. Nobody has a growth mindset or a fixed mindset in their life. They have a fixed mindset about things and an open growth mindset about certain things.
Yeah.
So it's finding where those blind spots are and becoming more self-aware of them. And so when you said, I'm not the spinning type, I'm like, what is the spinning type?
Yeah, what does that even mean?
What does that mean to you? What I know, it's what really it came down to is you were fearful.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know how to sit on a bike. I didn't know how to adjust a bike. I didn't know what posture you need.
Yeah.
I wanted to sit in the back. I like to sit in the back and watch everybody till I figure it out. And then once I became more comfortable and calloused, then, because when you ride bikes, holy ouch. So then I realized, like, I feel so much better in my body when I do this. I love it. And so I was asking you how many times is too many times to come in 1 week. And you were like, you could probably settle down a little bit. But what that taught me is that if I don't try it first, I can't really say I'm not that person. But recognizing that was me thinking the people who ride bikes look like that, and I don't look like them, therefore I'm not that.
Yes.
Does that make
You're
sense?
comparing yourself to other people.
It goes right back to comparison.
You had fear. So what if you had the skills you have now and you said, how could you reframe that now, knowing what you know, because you think about what the actual feelings were?
Yeah.
How could you articulate that?
So I would say vulnerability has been terrifying for me, and I have put a lot of work into overcoming that. So even the last time you and I talked on this podcast, I was so afraid that I might be too vulnerable in front of an audience, and now I'm like, this is me. It's okay. It's like I'm human, and vulnerability is part of that, and it's a strength.
Yeah.
Because my mindset has shifted around it being a strength versus a weakness, because I thought for so many years I have to be strong, I need to be stoic, I need to handle all this well. People can't see me struggling. People will think I can't handle this, and my plate is very heavy and full, and I need to make this look like I can do it. And it was this prison that I put myself in, like a mental and emotional prison, right?
Yeah.
And so now as my life has shifted in a lot of ways, I gravitate more towards being authentically genuine and vulnerable versus running from it, because it's too hard to keep that up.
It is.
And it's not healthy for me to keep that up. And so now I would say from before until today, if it makes you feel vulnerable and afraid, do it. Don't turn from it. Turn and face it, and try it. If you don't prefer it at that point, then okay.
After you've tried it.
After you've tried
Yeah.
it, and then you can say I don't prefer it because I have tried it. It wasn't my jam. But
And
I
maybe
think,
try it for a month or 2 months before, because anything you try new, you're not good at.
No.
And you have got to get over that lack of competence, like learning how to sit on the bike. And this applies to everything in life. We're talking about a spin bike right now, but it applies to anything. It applies to the new job. It applies to the new relationship. It applies to anything new you try. Nothing is comfortable at first because you're not competent at first.
yeah, and who likes to look like uncomfortable, right? On your first time doing something. It is like a fish out of water. You're not going to be good at it. And for those who like to be good at things straight out the gate, this is your call to, put yourself to the challenge of trying new things. So I'll give you an example. Years ago, I would read and hear that meditation was what was going to help and unlock my mind and help me to get calm, like give me all the stillness and the peace. And I would try it, and I would make it for 30 seconds, and my mind was going crazy. Like, what are we doing sitting here? We have so much we need to be doing. This is irresponsible with your time. You can't take this much time for yourself. And years of practice, like 15, I can sit and meditate for a good 30 minutes now. But it meant challenging my thoughts and challenging the emotions that came up that told me I always need to be busy. I always need to be hustling. I always need to be proving myself. I always need to make sure I'm busy. Like, the yard needs done. Like, there's always something. And now I can say, me first. If not me first, everyone gets the leftovers, and they're not that great.
Yeah, they're not that great. I know that feeling. I love that because I think meditation is one of those things too, where people say, I'm not a meditator. You're not anything until you've tried it. Like, and you have
How
to
do you
try.
know?
Yeah, and Brene Brown talks about FFTs, right? And so we can, which is first effing times, or effing first times, right?
Yeah.
So what that means is that anything that we do is going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to feel good. You're going to feel awkward and vulnerable and fearful. So it's really recognizing what is actually going on. So, I think at this point, I'd like to think that you've evolved enough to the point where you would say, let's just say today I asked you to go spinning or do something outside your comfort zone.
Let's go.
Do you think you might say to me, oh, that scares me.
Yeah.
I feel a little
makes me
vulnerable.
nervous.
I'm a little nervous.
Yes.
It sounds like a horrible idea. When can we go?
How soon can we pack the car?
Doesn't that feel more authentic to just say, oh, I'm so scared, but I know I can do this, and I know that you want to see me successful. Do you literally think I'd try to bring you in and watch you fail in front of people?
No, absolutely not.
And that group of people is open to helping people see themselves as in their best light and helping them accomplish their goals and not compete with one another, competing with yourself.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think helps is when we start to not compare ourselves to what other people are doing, but to where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow. Take that focus off of them and focus on whether it's riding a bike, whether it's starting a new business, whether it's, writing a book. Not about what everybody else is doing out there, but where am I today and how can I get better at this day in and day out? And that's what you did. First person to get 100 rides. Then who was like addicted to it to the point where your mental and physical health were dependent on it. And how good did you feel?
My body craved it. I didn't. On the days I went was a completely different experience than the days that I didn't go.
At work, right?
At work and with everything.
Yep.
My outlook, my energy level, my interactions with other people, the way I felt about myself, and the way I feel about myself, it also bleeds into how I interact with other people.
It absolutely does. And that is something that we see in all of our relationships, and especially in the workplace. when we're not confident in ourselves and we don't understand ourselves, it's hard to be compassionate for others. It's hard to be empathetic for others if we're not empathetic or compassionate for ourselves. Or if we don't trust ourselves, how can we trust other people?
Right. And I think part of looking closer at that is saying, where did that come from? And why am I still carrying it? And how can I shift that? What's some work I can do to help myself do better in the areas where I feel weak, where I feel inadequate, where I feel like I'm, vulnerable or whatever, and take some time for yourself to pinpoint those things. We talk about, in my analogy in START, is when you're on an airplane and they say if the cabin loses air pressure and the air mask drop, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to put it on yourself first and then assist other people, because if you do it the opposite way,
you'll pass out.
You're passed out. You're useful to no one.
Yeah.
And so, if you have people who are dependent on you, little people, young people, teenagers, whatever, you have to recognize that if you don't put your own oxygen mask on first and take care of yourself, you cannot take care of others well. They get your leftovers, right? Yep. But part of that is identifying what's getting in your way. And it could be feelings of inadequacy, feelings of, I want to be known as a selfless person, and I'm not selfless if I don't put everybody else first. And I would argue with that, because that's just not true. And I've been that selfless person. I woke up every day feeling like I needed to give all of myself away to other people for so many years, because that was the life that I lived at the time and the religion I lived at the time. And now I think to myself, I'm just as important as everyone else. I'm not saying I'm more important. I'm saying me too.
Yeah.
And giving myself that, but also recognizing, like, you've watched Dances with the Stars, right? What happens when they're learning a new dance?
They're clumsy,
They're
right?
clumsy.
Yes.
And it's awkward, and they're tripping, and there's video cameras on them, right? And everybody's watching them. And then what happens over time?
They get
the flow, they get the mastery, they get every step right, and there's a rhythm to it. But I think it goes back to trying new things, is that it's going to be that.
It's going to suck at first.
Expect it. But then I was listening to a podcast, I think you and maybe Jeff had sent, where the guy said, when I face adversity or a challenge, I ask myself, how can I use this? How can I use what I'm learning here to make myself better? How can I use this to be more insightful? How can I use this to be more reflective? And really stopping and saying, I'm curious about me. I want to know how I work, how I operate in the world, how my brain is triggered by things, how my emotions come up, and how they override everything. And then I'm spreading emotion contagion. And one of my students yesterday in their presentation said, in their self-awareness piece, like, what am I a super spreader of when it comes to emotions and emotion contagion? And she's looked really closely at that and stopped and said, oh, I recognize that I contribute poorly to a lot of environments based on what I spread emotionally to people. And so she had to look really hard at herself over an entire semester and go, oh, I'm that person. Sometimes when I'm feeling these specific emotions, I spread these things. I'm responsible for that.
And then it's also, those are new feelings of embarrassment or shame. So that brings on, once you have that realization, and this is why I think a lot of people run from the work, because they don't want to feel the uncomfortableness about looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just want to say, if you're uncomfortable looking in the mirror, please just do it anyways, because all of us have it, and you're not alone in that. All of us have been embarrassed of our behavior. All of us have said things, done things, yelled, done things that we're not proud of. And I'm going to ask you to give yourself some space and grace and stay out of judgment of yourself.
Yeah.
And be curious with yourself and ask questions like, how can I get to, this is what has happened in the past, but how do I shift things in the future? And that is reframing and getting a support network, finding people that are on this journey with you that are going to help you along. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend your time with. So if you're in this liminal space where you are tired of living your life the way you have been, you're going to have to surround yourself with some people that want to see you do better and will hold you accountable. and we'll give you that safe space to stumble, to fall, and we'll be an actual coach versus a cheerleader that tells you you're doing everything right, or your worst critic. You don't want your worst critic's feedback.
Yeah.
You're looking for somebody that will coach and help you, and will be honest with you. And oftentimes it's not your friends. It sometimes needs to be a professional or somebody externally that isn't emotionally involved in your situation.
Yeah, and I would also say welcome the opportunity for transformation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it takes work. It's just like going to the gym one time and saying,
it didn't work for
my
me.
My muscles aren't big.
It didn't work. Yeah.
I worked out so hard and I don't see any difference. It takes time and effort and consistency.
Yeah.
But welcoming in that liminal space, right? Recognizing this is where I get the opportunity to learn better. And when I know better, I do better. And sorry, keep bumping. But I think in those moments, it's your mindset and your feelings about it that are going to drive whether or not you are consistent with it. And I tell my students and people all the time, you're worth the work. You're worth the struggle. You're worth the time it takes to reflect. You're worth the effort. But you have to be the one that does it. And you have to surround yourself with people who are supportive and caring and inspiring, but will also tell you the truth and will also call out your BS, right? And that they'll still hold space for however long it takes you to get there. It doesn't have to be overnight. And
you are worth the investment too.
Yes.
If that means taking a course, if that means hiring a coach, if that means going on a retreat, if that means getting therapy, you are responsible and you are worth that. And we live in a society where we focus on everything external. We don't mind spending money on stuff that makes us look good.
Yeah.
We need to focus on the books, the podcasts, the therapy, a coach, things that actually help you grow internally. That's the stuff that's going to help you navigate life, understand. If your relationships are better and your spiritual life is better and your emotional and mental health is better, your life is better.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I tend to do a lot of things at once because I'm pretty active that way. But when I was moving and buying a new house and finishing grad school and 2 or 3 weddings in a year, my kids got married and grandbabies and all these things were happening. And there was a lot of my effort going out to other things. I felt that, and I stopped taking care of me to take care of everything else that needed attended to.
Yeah.
And boy, did I feel the difference physically, emotionally, mentally. I just didn't feel like myself in the world, and it took me twice as long to come out of that as it did to get deep in it, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think when you can stop and say, hold on a minute, we all can get lost in that, and we all can fall down those rabbit holes. It's what we do with when we recognize that to get ourselves out of it. Like
Hit pause.
you said,
Hit pause.
Reset.
Get
Reflective, get a reset, get some therapy, go to a retreat, figure out something that's going to set your soul at rest, and then set it back on fire, and then get back out to it. That was a pretty critical time for me. I think we assume once we hit a certain age, things just get easier and they're free flowing. We don't have as much responsibility, but it's just different.
It's
right?
different. It's different. Yeah, it's absolutely different, but it all weighs on you emotionally and it takes headspace. And so I love the idea of recognizing and just stopping and asking, where am I right now? Like some seasons require that. So you might be, for you, that was like wedding season, school season, but for some people it might be in their job, it might be tax season or energy assistance season or the busiest time of year or campaign season or whatever season you get in life. Some seasons you're going to have to burn the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
But that is not sustainable.
No.
And I think people forget to pause. Once that season is over, they stay in the habit.
Yeah.
So they've created a habit of burning themselves out. And this is where it becomes important to become self-aware and ask, why am I still doing this? It's okay that I did it for this long, but I can't keep burning the candle. This is a new season. And one of the tools that I think is very helpful for this is the Wheel of Life. You could find it on like Positive Psychology or anywhere on, that it has your physical, your spiritual, your financial, your emotional, your relationships, and it diagrams them out. Even looking at monthly, what is my focus going to be? What do I want to work on this month? And so that you are kind of getting a little bit of balance. Sometimes your work is going to be the big focus, or your finishing school is going to be the big focus, or it's wedding season and you're an event planner.
Right.
That's going to be a busy season. And so recognizing that is this season, but how am I going to shift once this season's over? How am I going to self-care with myself? For me, when I'm traveling a lot and sometimes don't have gyms and workouts, the workouts, I might get out for walks and I might do things, but I'm not doing as much as when I get home, and then I'm like, okay, I'm dialing. I have to find the balance so that I don't just completely give up on the things that matter most to me.
And I think if you're implementing restorative practices for yourself, then you, again, are self-aware of how you're doing. You're communicating that well to other people. You're not blaming people for how you're doing. You're taking accountability for your existence in the world, and you're showing up a better version of you.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in grad school, I just felt so much guilt because I was so consumed in my last semester with my capstone that I was sitting at the desk just crying one day, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? And I thought, I miss my kids, I miss my interactions, but this is where I got to hustle. This is where it's all about me putting in the work to get where I want to be. And so I thought, how am I feeling? I'm feeling disconnected. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling separate and maybe not as involved. And what can I do about that? What do I need? I need to tell them I love them. This is my priority, but I'm always here. Please don't think that I love you any less. This is just my season to, kind of hone in on finishing strong with this. And I did. I sent out this long text to the kids and their my extra kids, my bonus kids, and they sent me back so much love and understanding and grace and like support and, we're so proud of you, things like that. And I had to be self-aware enough to say, this is how I'm feeling. Sit in the suck of it for a minute. Let myself feel it. It didn't last forever, like we said. But then communicating it in a way that people understand where I'm coming from, how I'm feeling. I'm not blaming them for what's going on and taking accountability and saying, this is just where I'm at. But you can prioritize yourself well and communicate well with others so they know how to support you.
Absolutely, and you're worth it.
That's part of our job, right? We can't just cut other people off and expect them to know how we're doing. We need to communicate what we need, what we want, what our desires are.
Yeah, even though we're mind readers doesn't mean other people.
I'm great at mind reading. That's not
psychic
true.
Thoughts.
That's not true. I'm not.
All of us think we are with our psychic thoughts, but literally one of the things that really stood out to me there is both of us on this journey. One thing I know we've both gotten better with because we've been talking about it, and in our girlfriend group, is that we're better at asking for help. Because I know that a few years ago, neither of us were very good at asking for help.
Yeah.
And I think knowing what you need, knowing when to ask for help, and being vulnerable and saying, not just sharing when times are good, but when you're in the suck, when you're sitting in the suck, sometimes it just feels good to know. No, you're not asking your friends or your support network to solve your problems, but just to know you're feeling this way and you don't want to be alone and disconnected. And you know that people do have your back, even when you don't have your back, because sometimes you don't have your back. And you might be harder on yourself than other people are. And so I think it's important, and that's something that I struggle with. I know that I give a lot of other people grace.
Yes.
But I'm not as good at giving it to myself. And I don't talk to myself negatively like I used to, but I still second guess myself. Wish I hadn't. Once you become self-aware too, you really think about the things you've said and what you've done. And then you might start being like, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't said it this way, or I did, you become a little bit more, in tune with what you're saying. And so it matters that you recognize that you're not going to get it right all the time.
All the time, yeah. And it goes back to when you know better, you do better, but sometimes you don't do better because you go right back into those
habits,
pathways of your brain that you were taught how to react to things, and it's just an automatic response. And then you're like, oh man, I know how to do that better, and I didn't do that, or and you feel those things. And I remember when you had brought up one specific thing for you, I remember saying, I know your heart. Mm-hmm. I know your heart. I know I'm not worried about you if you slip here and there, because I know your heart. I know you're well-intended. I know you're loving. I know you're generous. I know you give grace. I know you're kind. Yeah. And so finding your people that can see who you are, even when you're not at your best, and give you some grace.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's helpful to have that. And if you don't have that, I really encourage you to be vulnerable with some people, because I think that's going to bring you closer, and you will find, but it makes sure that it's somebody that you think you can trust. And when you feel that, and you can be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm feeling kind of lonely or disconnected. I could use a friend today. Could we meet for coffee? Something like that. Or I just need to know you have my back, or whatever it is that you need. Learning to say what you need and advocate for yourself is a skill.
Because people can't help you if they don't know how you're doing. And if you don't know what you need. I mean, I have seen people in relationships run around like, are you okay? Yep. Are you mad at me? Nope. Did I do something? Mm-mm. And you run people around trying to guess how you're feeling and what you need. Do you see how differently it goes if somebody says, are you okay? And you go, actually, I'm not okay. I'm feeling like a failure right now, and I'm really being hard on myself. Do you see how you create an opportunity for connection, authentic, sincere connection, and let somebody help you if you can open up and say how you're feeling in that moment, instead of giving attitude and pushback and deflection. And you quit making people run around trying to make sure you're okay. That's your job.
Yeah. And you also close off an opportunity for a relationship, because let's just say, for example, you were upset with me, or like I'm upset with myself, and you ask me, are you okay? And I say, actually, no, I felt like when you said this, I felt like it was a personal attack. And then you have an opportunity to say, oh, whoa, that was not what my intention was. My intention was this. I'm sorry you took it this way. That wasn't my meaning. And you get to know my intentions. And so all of a sudden, something that would have pushed us apart actually drives us together, because we were brave enough to have a conversation about, and it does take courage. It takes bravery to be vulnerable.
And let me tell you how relieving it is to be with a person who can stop and say, actually, I think this is what's going on. So yesterday morning, my partner and I were getting ready for the day, and he brought up a concern. I had done something that kind of hurt his feelings, which, thank you for bringing it to my attention and not just punishing me and ignoring me or being curt with me.
Yes.
I don't know what to do with that. And then I said, I'm really sorry. That was not my intention. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. And he said, actually, you know what I think it is? I'm just really tired. I didn't get hardly any sleep last night. That's the underlier here. I'm not trying to make you wrong. I'm just really tired. And I'm sitting there like, thank you for knowing that, knowing yourself well enough to be able to identify that, so that I don't feel like I was in the wrong all day, because I'll take it and wash myself down with how I should have done it different, same as you, right? Like, I know how to do that different. What was I thinking? And then later I said, I just want to check in. Are we still okay? Are you upset? I'm absolutely not upset. I'm so exhausted today. That's all this is, I promise. But if he can't identify that and tell me, then he gives me the responsibility to guess, and my head can go all sorts of ways. So bringing it back to this, knowing how you're feeling, why you feel that way, what you need, we empower each other, and our relationships are healthier when we can get in tune with ourselves, whether it's doing something for yourself, a restorative practice, meditation, going to the gym, spinning, whatever it is to help clear your head and make yourself better. Your existence is better, which then ripples out on everybody else's existence in your circles.
And that's what we're here to do, is create ripples of impact, real return on investment in our communities, in our families, in our schools, in our workplaces. That's the message. This is why we're passionate about this. This is why we will talk to most groups. Anytime we get the opportunity to speak on emotional intelligence, to coach, to talk, to train, to facilitate, to have deep, meaningful conversations like this, it's something that does fuel my soul. I know it does yours. We're on this journey You're certified in emotional intelligence. You do workshops, you do trainings, all the things, same as me. There's so many people that need the help, and they're ready to take the step, but they might be fearful. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them, knowing, because when I brought it to you, like 2016, I want to say 17, 2017, mm-hmm. I don't know. At first, you're like, "What is this?" Right? Like,
yeah, I've never heard of it. What is this even?
Yeah,
I'd like have to do with anything. And then as you continued to talk and share and did a training for a group at ISU, I was like, "Wow!" My mind was blown. Mm-hmm. My mind was blown by it.
And that's exactly the same way I felt mm-hmm. when I went through the same type of training.
Yeah,
and so I was like, "I need to know this. I want to learn about it. I want to teach it." And then I just have been on that journey ever since. And it's interesting because it doesn't matter what level you're at. You can be a surgeon. You could be a Supreme Court judge. You could be a person straight out of incarceration, a student, a wife, a clergyman. Any single position in life, like this is one set of skills that will enhance your life experience. Mm-hmm. 100, and your emotional health is part of your mental health.
Yes.
And so it's not only going to help you physically, it's going to help you mentally and emotionally and your spiritual life, because if your emotional health is not intact and you are in a rabbit hole of whatever downward mm-hmm. spiral you're in, it's hard to have a healthy emotional, physical, or spiritual life.
Yeah, you're not in tune with yourself or anything else because
and it's
your
okay.
emotions are taking
So don't
over.
be upset with yourself if that's where you are. That's the best place to start, because pain is a wonderful motivator. And so if you are in that place, I would just say, this is the time to reach out. This is the time to say yes to something that you wouldn't do before. Yeah. This is the time to invest in yourself. This is the time to make it a priority, to get a mentor, to find out, to seek,
yes.
and to dive deeper into this soulful place in your life, mm-hmm. Which is your emotions and how you handle those. Because once you start the journey, you will never regret it, and it never ends. You don't do a training and be like, check, I did emotional intelligence. Yeah. I read a book, or I listened to a podcast. It is a consistent. It's a way of life and a way of being, because you're constantly having new emotions. Being a grandma, did you have new emotions that you've never experienced in your life?
So many different ones that I mean, everything from watching your kid become a parent to watching how they love that tiny, to watch them struggle and what they look like on very little sleep and all wrung out and feeling a little helpless, but not wanting to be an enabler of, like, let me come fix your whole life for you so you don't have to feel discomfort. Like, there's so many things that come new. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So every single aspect of our life revolves around our emotions. It's more about how we learn about them, how we handle ourselves, and what we can control. Mm-hmm. And that's really only us. That's the only thing we have.
And how we communicate them. Because if we're not communicating them in an effective, healthy way, we're communicating them through the way we treat people, mm-hmm. our behaviors, our thought patterns, and the way we exist in the world. So why not choose to learn more, to be more self-reflective, to put in the work for yourself so that you can feel more in control of something in your life, mm-hmm. right? Because sometimes the world's just going on and everything feels out of control, but knowing, like, I have the freedom in this moment, I'm not limited to one way of acting or reacting about this. I'm free to choose a different way and to do better in a way that's conducive with my values, mm-hmm. and how I feel better in the world and feel better in my skin, and not be passive aggressive, and take more ownership for your place in the world, because how you're doing impacts everything, and you matter.
Yeah, and if you can learn to handle and understand and understand your emotions, you can live into your values better. Mm. Because let's just say you value kindness.
Yeah.
And you're unkind to people.
When you're mad because, well, they should have known better, because you pissed me off and I'm going to be a jerk.
So we can't live into our values if we can't manage our feelings about that, or the shame that we feel like when we were unkind to somebody, recognizing and being able to apologize. That has its own fears.
Right.
So everything is emotional. There's emotional friction all around us. We have to recognize which ones are there. And once we recognize it's there, we can be like, oh, I'm afraid of that. So that's why. Oh, this is why I'm feeling fear. So that's what's going on.
Yeah. When I feel fear, I technically, like, my fight or flight is triggered, so I either want to fight you or I'm taken off.
Yeah.
I can do different. This time, instead of doing what I normally have done and getting the same result every time, I can stop and go, how can I do this different? How can I do this better? And it really is just the most empowering gift you can give yourself to put that amount of work in. And I say that because since you introduced it to me, it's been thick in my daily existence with everything that I do. And my goal is to get this into all the cracks and to help as many people with this as possible, because that emotional freedom, that emotional integrity, that emotional confidence is something that can, like, I had done a training with a group recently, and one of the ladies who would tell you she's a bull in a china shop, and when she's upset, we're talking about it right now, she's in your face, and she said, this has changed me so much that my home is now peaceful. My kids and my husband, we exist in a different way now because I know how to do better.
Yep.
And she wanted to do better the whole time. She just didn't have the tools. And so now, I mean, think about that, ladies. If that's what your life existence is now, there's some really great tools out there to help you feel better and create that existence for yourself, which then ripples out onto other people. It's so powerful.
Absolutely. And this is one of the ways that we can create generational impact. Huge.
Generational health.
Yeah. So 3 things that you wish, or 2 or 3 things that you wish you would have known as your younger self as it relates to growing your emotional intelligence.
Okay. Feelings aren't good or bad. They just are. Vulnerability is a strength, and you can use your emotions to your advantage.
Yes.
Those are the 3 things where I just never thought. I thought emotions were irrational, and they created drama, and that they created friction. And now, if I can communicate them in a constructive way, then it really enhances my relationships and my well-being in the world. So
yes, absolutely. I love that.
Girl.
Thank you for talking about
thanks for having me.
Our favorite topic, and sharing, being a spreader of the light and sharing ripples of impact. Thank you for listening to the Leader You podcast. If you found this helpful, please share it. There's somebody that probably needs to hear this message, and you are worth the time. You're worth the investment, and we love you, and we just want to see you grow and shine in your light. Thank you.